Welcome to a Big Picture Channel podcast and vodcast here on Total Picture Radio. This is Peter Clayton reporting. You can choose to watch and or listen to today's show featuring Bill Kutik, technology columnist for Human Resource Executive magazine for the past 24 years. Bill is also the host of the independent bi-weekly Bill Kutik radio show and is perhaps best known as founding co-chair of the magazine's famous HR Technology Conference and Expo, where he is stepping down this year after October's event after 16 years. But, of course, he'll be continuing his other industry activities, which is a polite way of saying that he's looking for new and exciting ways to stir up some trouble. I'm pleased to offer Total Picture Radio readers, listeners, and viewers a $500 discount off the on-site rate for HR Technology Conference. When you register, just use the promo code Clayton13. That's Clayton, C-L-A-Y-T-O-N, all in caps. Visit Bill's feature page on TotalPicture.com for more information. Bill, this is truly a special occasion. Thanks so much for taking time to speak with me today.
Well, I'm just delighted that we've stepped up our game and we're doing it in video for the first time in 4 years.
Yeah, that's true. I want to start off by again, this is, you've been doing this for 16 years. Let's go down memory lane a little bit. Just tell me, what have been some of the major things that have come along in the past 16 years that are perhaps still with us and still building?
Well, this is sort of outside of HR, but the single largest event that sticks in my mind over 16 years is the fact that we were holding the conference on 9/11 in Baltimore. And I was running the analyst panel, which was a fixture at the conference for 12 years, when someone passed me up a note that said, "You have to tell everyone that an airliner has flown into the World Trade Center in perhaps a terrorist attack." I folded that note thinking, I don't have to tell anybody nothing. And I turned to the panel, and it's old joke in those days from Saturday Night Live. I said, "Talk among yourselves." And I walked out the door to go talk to the people who had sent me the note to find out what was going on. And then the question became, how do you tell people something so cataclysmic and awful in a public setting? And it was pure instinct, but when I got back to the podium, I said, how many people here's favorite show is West Wing, as mine is? And you may remember that very popular show about politics and president giving press conferences and such. And happily, more than half the hands went up. And I said, well, then you all know that when someone on the podium gets a note, it's pretty important. And that if they walk off the podium to talk to someone about the note, it's really important. And then I proceeded to tell them. I mean, you've got to tee people up to give them really bad news. And I felt that I did. And I was very proud of myself and pleased with the outcome. And I cannot tell you that every year since at HR Technology, someone comes up to me and says, hey, remember when you announced 9/11? So, we were pretty small in those days. There were about 350 paid people. It's amazing to me that for 350 people, I am 9/11 for them. I mean, I'm the guy who told them about it. So that is the most memorable thing, actually.
It's one of those life-changing events that obviously affects everyone.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Since that event, there have been a tremendous amount of changes in HR, in recruiting, in technology that has been used to help and assist HR professionals and recruiters in their jobs. What have been some of the key technologies from your perspective since that time?
Sure. You have to remember, we started in 1998, which was really the beginning of the end of client server technology, which had been started by PeopleSoft in 1989 and really gained a lot of steam in 91, 92. They had no competition until 95. It's one of the reasons they're as big as they are today. And by 98, when we started, that was beginning to fade into something that it's hard for all of us to remember, were web-based applications, which means you accessed your application with a web browser, but it was in your office. The software was in your office. And oftentimes what you got back was Windows. And Windows, as we all know, in those days particularly, had its limitations. And then in 2000, true these web-based applications got to be very popular. But the big deal is SaaS. I mean, SaaS is software as a service, is a generational change in computing, as much as the shift from mainframe to client server, from certainly more than client server to web-based applications. SaaS, where you don't have the application on premise, you don't have computers on premise running it, your vendor does it for you, you don't have to upgrade the software yourself, the vendor's going to do that for you. I mean, this is truly a revolution. Now, how quickly really big companies who have invested $30, $40 million in their on-premise PeopleSoft, SAP, Oracle, ADP too, installations are going to switch to SaaS is anybody's guess. If I knew the answer to that, I'd be very rich. I have no idea how quickly they're going to switch. A lot of people say 2 to 5 years. There'll be some large companies that will never switch because they've spent so much money making this thing work, the software work exactly the way they want it to work. They've customized it to death. They've had 20 IT people writing new software code to make it do exactly what they want it to do. So it's going to be, even though it feels like a revolution, it's going to be an evolution. On the recruiting side, I got to tell you, the biggest thing is LinkedIn. Just no doubt about it in my mind. And even though they don't sell themselves as an HCM company, someone recently on my LinkedIn group, by chance, pointed out that 55% of LinkedIn's revenue is basically HCM revenue. And I heard this great story 20 years ago from Lars Perkins, the guy who invented the applicant tracking system, the original recruiting software. And his bona fides are that he later invented Picasa, the photo organizing app that Google bought and bought him, and he worked for Google for 5 years as a vice president. So this guy was visionary in a lot of ways, but no more visionary than he was 20 years ago, 1993. I don't think I knew the internet existed when he said to me, Bill, imagine a day when everyone's resume is just out there. I have no idea how. It's just out there. Imagine how that changes recruiting. Imagine how it changes you from a putz in a rowboat with a hook, baited hook over the line, hoping to attract a candidate, to a guy in a scuba outfit with a spear gun going to look to spear your candidate. How it changes recruiting from attraction, selection, and hiring to searching, selection, and hiring. And God, 20 years later, is this guy not 100% right? Is this not exactly the situation that recruiters now find themselves? Except that all those resumes that are just out there are in locked pens. Locked pens called LinkedIn, locked pens called Monster, locked pens called Dice, and a lot of different locked pens. But recruiters who are the most overworked people in HR. I mean, I organized panels for recruiting vendors at their user conferences for years. And at every single one, I always ask the question, how many people here, and they were always in the trench recruiters, how many people here have time to work on anything but the rec on their desks? And I think I got one hand up in 10 years. So recruiters are enormously overworked. So the idea that they have time to go out and search for people rather than simply shuffle through and select the people who have been attracted by what's essentially a centuries-old advertising model that's just new technology, job boards, career sites, and the rest. The idea that they would have time to do that has until recently been preposterous. They haven't had time to do that, but now they do. And I think that we're going to see recruiting changing because of services like LinkedIn and others.
Let's take a look at this year's HR Technology Conference a little bit and delve into some of the new features that I know you're excited about and some of the things that you're going to be hosting. You're doing a Tonight Show kind of a format, actually with a band and a bunch of luminaries.
Doc Severinsen, I think of the band.
And this year, of course, HR Technology will be at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, Nevada. And you seem to be kind of going back and forth between Chicago and Las Vegas.
That's over.
Yeah?
Yeah, we are in Las Vegas for the foreseeable future for one, I think, incredibly good reason. And that is, and you know this, in Chicago when the show closed for the day, the show floor or the content ended for the day, people scattered to the winds to 15 different parties around the city.
Right.
The thing that's so great about Mandalay Bay, where we were 2 years ago, is that there are 15 or 20 restaurants in the hotel. And every vendor plus, rooms galore, conference type rooms. So every single vendor who wants to have a party can have a party in the hotel, which I find is this enormous concentration of energy. I love that. The fact that you're not just bumping into the people at the one of the 15 parties you chose. As soon as you leave that party, you're bumping into people from other parties, and maybe you're joining other parties. But it's this whole sense, and it's true, you just don't make this stuff up. It's this whole sense of community, which is what it is. It reinforces that sense of community. If we count everybody, and I do count everybody, okay? I don't discriminate against vendors. Vendors are as full members of our community as any HR practitioner or analyst or blogger or expert or consultant. If you include everybody who was there last year, we had 6,000 people. That's an enormous gathering, and every single one of them cared about HR technology. I found that absolutely thrilling. And this year, it's going to be more. I think it'll probably be 6,500. We might even hit 7,000. You always go out on a limb when you make these kinds of predictions.
Right.
So it's stupid. But that's why we're not going back to Chicago. And also, frankly, we've gotten a little big for the Chicago hotels. And I don't think anyone in his right mind likes McCormick Place. It's like a 19th century hospital that's added 6 wings in the last 160 years, and sometimes the floors don't quite match up. It's a terrible place. It's a maze. Where all these convention centers in Vegas are terrific because they're designed as convention centers. But back to your question, for 16 years, I have pressed myself to come up with new things for HR technology. New structures for sessions, new content, whatever. With the basic thinking that a day without innovation, a conference without innovation is like a day without sunshine. You've got to have it, and people expect it, or else they say, "Oh, same old thing as last year." What's going on here? So we have some major structural changes this year, and the first one you mentioned. Our Tuesday morning general session was for 12 years an analyst panel, 4 of the best experts in the country about HR technology. And that was great until they all started agreeing with each other. And and that made it
That gets really boring.
Boring, exactly, boring. And as you may know, I'm a big believer in the fact that this is a conference and trade show, which makes us part of show business. And we may be on the lowest rung of show business with street mimes and subway musicians, but we're still show business. And there's got to be a little entertainment, or you're not going to teach people anything. So once those panels got so boring, we said, enough of those. And then we tried 2 years of debates, And you know, we should have known this in advance, but since the people who did the debates, Jim Hollencheck, then with Gartner, Naomi Lee Bloom, Jason Averbuch, then with KI, now with Aperio, who's going to be our closing keynote this year and is just positively great. This year, it was actually Naomi's idea to use the Tonight Show format. And it was Steve Bose, who, as you know, has been my partner this year and will be my replacement next year,
right,
who wrote it up in the brochure in a way that made it make so much more sense than I did, which was, hey, we all know how technology has changed the way we consume entertainment and information, but there's one format that has remained constant for 40 or 50 years, and it has been that long, and that's the late night TV talk show. The structure hasn't changed in 50 years.
Right. And the Letterman show, same
all
thing.
All of them. They're
Yeah.
exactly the same.
A guy at a desk with a couch.
A guy at a desk with a couch.
And a sidekick.
And a lovable sidekick.
Yeah.
And in the most improbable bit of miscasting, we have Naomi Lee Bloom as the lovable sidekick. So that's one thing.
Right.
The second thing that I love is our HR Tech Talks, which are designed to be short, 18 minutes, so 3 of them can fill one of our breakout sessions. And really packed with ideas, packed with energy, and I simply called up 6 people that I knew were really good public speakers, and I said, hey, I want you to talk about what you feel most passionately about. And then the third innovation is a panel called Next Gen Influencers Panel. I like to think of it as 4 under 40, though we're not checking IDs. 4 people who have never spoken before at the conference and who come from a range of roles within our industry. But the point being that baby boomers, you know, get out of the way, right? And that's what I'm doing by stepping down from the show. I'm getting out of the way at my age for a guy who I think is 42 or 43 and is a Gen Xer.
Right.
And you know, you've heard about Gen Xers being sort of pissed off that the baby boomers are
absolutely.
hanging on,
Yeah.
right?
Like we never leave.
Like we'll never leave.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm making room for him. So those are 3 of the absolutely brand new things. The thing that, due to its own structure, is always new is Awesome New Technologies, which I handed over to my successor, Steve Bose, because I thought it was a perfect thing for him to do, show his judgment. I explained to him early on, the job of being the programmer for this show isn't to be brilliant yourself. It isn't to get up there and give your own session and be incredibly smart. The job is to find other brilliant people and help them be as brilliant as they can possibly be. I mean, that's what the job is. And that's particularly true in Awesome New Technologies, where he is scouring the landscape of startups, but also of established companies who aren't finished innovating. And from whatever humongous number he's looking at, he is going to choose 6 to give a 10-minute demo each. And you know, that's new every year because the content is so new.
There's one other thing I really want to talk a little bit about, and it has to do with my personal involvement in it, and that's the Candidate Experience Awards, which, you know, once again this year will be announced at the HR Technology Conference, and there's going to be a panel discussion with some of the winners the following day after the winners have been announced. And I know that you are somewhat involved in the Candidate Experience Awards as well. So talk to us a little bit about that and how that really fits into your conference.
It fits into our conference like hand in glove. And when Elaine Orler, who was the driving spirit behind it, the CEO of Talent Function, who will be giving her own separate presentation trying to make sense of the always jumbled and cluttered and confusing technology marketplace in recruiting. When Elaine came to me with that idea, my immediate reaction was, perfect, absolutely perfect. Because we're in a time when there aren't enough jobs, There are tons of candidates, and the easy and natural thing for corporations to do is to treat them badly because there's so many of them. And here you're proposing to set up a series of awards, very rigorously judged, for companies who treat candidates well during that whole application experience. And pardon me if I'm repeating myself from last year, but when I heard the idea, I said, Elaine, you're going to get bigger than the HR Technology Conference so soon. You're going to have to hold these awards in the Kodak Theater where the Oscars are held. And I've agreed to be on her board of advisors. And you're right, they changed it this year, partly on my suggestion, partly on their own perception, because last year they actually gave out the awards at the conference session, which didn't leave much time for education for the other people in the audience who wanted to know, hey, what'd you do to win this award? And how do you do things differently there than we do it? And, teach me something. That's what I'm here for, to learn stuff. And so now this year, Elaine is hosting a party, or the Candies are hosting a party Monday night where they'll actually give the awards out. And then Tuesday at the conference, as you say, some of the winners will be in a panel which someone will moderate, either Elaine or Ed or Jerry, and draw out from them just exactly what it is that they do that makes them so special. And you're probably aware that the way they find out what they do is they accept self-nominations from corporations, and I think their number has doubled this year from last year.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just caught on like wildfire. And then, in order to move forward in the process, the corporations have to agree to ping their candidates with the Candy survey and ask them to fill it out. Well, Elaine was telling me that this year, I think, they've gotten 12,000 candidates to fill out that survey. I mean, that's a significant database.
It is, and what's really interesting about that, Bill, is this is a very thorough survey that they do. This is not something you do in 5 minutes. Someone who decides to go through and actually fill one of these things out is spending about a half an hour doing so. So it really says to me how important candidates feel this is for them to take the time. And of course, these are candidates who weren't given job offers with these organizations.
Oh, right. So they don't have that bias.
Exactly. Yeah. This is everyone.
Right.
And that's part of the deal, is you have to give us everyone who's applied for a job, whether they were offered a job or not.
Right.
And I think that's what really becomes revealing in the statistics they have.
It keeps growing and growing every year. They have a UK affiliate now this year, right, which is not tied to them, but does use their methodology and all the rest. So the Candies, I think, have been a terrific addition to HR Technology, and I'm delighted that Elaine, doesn't feel like she has to move to the Kodak Theater.
In the few minutes we have left, Bill, what are some of the other highlights that you would like to share with us about this year's HR Tech Conference?
Sure. The biggest highlight I'd like to share actually is our evolution from a conference that was for people who already cared about HR technology because it was part of their job, probably, to a conference that's really for everyone in HR technology. It's for generalists and recruiters who may feel that technology really isn't for them or they don't really need to care about it. But the fact is that it has crept into every corner of HR so that even those two who are the lowest, the entry rung on the HR ladder, even those two, if they don't learn about it, their careers are going to suffer. They're not going to get promoted the way they should. Their productivity is going to suffer. They won't do as good a job for their company. Then there are, of course, the systems managers, leaders, whatever they're called. Some companies, they're vice presidents, and others, directors or managers, who, they want to come here, exactly how Walgreens instituted their LMS. And then, and this has always been our target, the mid and high level leaders, the VP of Comp and Benefits, who in another company might be called the director of comp and benefits. But in any case, they're in charge of a domain, or the recruiting, the talent acquisition guy, or the VP of HR, who's the top HR person in a smaller company, the SVP in a larger company. Some have EVPs, some call them CHROs now. In any case, all of these people, and we have always focused on them, and we've always attracted a lot of them, all of these people are making technology decisions, not every day, obviously, once a week, once a month, once a year, whatever it is. They're making decisions probably not knowing as much as they'd like to know about what they're deciding on, and they're instead relying on someone who reports to them to explain it all to them, or just to accept their decision on faith. And I haven't managed people in a very long time. I've been self-employed for 24 years, but I would always want to know myself. And I think increasingly they want to know themselves. So in some odd way, that's a highlight of the conference. The fact that we're for everyone in HR now. And we've got a lot of bloggers out there who are generalists in HR, who are CHROs, but who are not techies in any sense of the term, who are writing about how valuable it is to them and their colleagues. And I'm just hoping people get the message.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us again here on Total Picture Radio. It's always a pleasure to get together with you.
Well, it's my joy being with the best on-air interviewer I know, and now ratcheting up your game to video. So that's great.
Thank you.